Welcome back to the CNR recap. I'm Griffin Aldrich. Alongside me, we got Tommy Martinotti and Carl McDonald. And your Boston Celtics have destroyed the Atlanta Hawks tonight with a final score of 132 to 106. And I, I like to yap a lot, but let's go over initial thoughts. We'll start off with Tommy, go to Carl, and back to myself. But what are your initial thoughts after this huge win by the Boston Celtics? Again, Jaylen Brown went off tonight and had an amazing game for his home crowd. Actually, just got his jersey retired yesterday for his high school, but goes off tonight. But what are your thoughts, Tommy?
Yeah, it really was pretty dominating from the second quarter and on. The Celtics really just got hot from three. We saw Sam Hauser probably have one of his better games this season for sure. Jaylen Brown, another great 40 point performance from him. And we talked about it on the most recent podcast. Most of us kind of knew last week was pretty disappointing, but I felt pretty confident that this team would bounce back. There's always bumps in the road, even for good teams in this league. Lost a few really close games against some shorthanded teams, but to see them bounce back like this to get a blowout win against an Atlanta Hawks team that has been playing pretty well this season. They just kind of got off of a West Coast trip, and I think you kind of saw them having the effects of that tonight. So it was good to see the Celtics kind of jump on them early, and then they kind of just extended that lead and never gave Atlanta any hope or momentum to get back into it. And it was good to see kind of guys get some rest in that fourth quarter. We saw our guys Amari Williams and Ron Harper get a chance to get some burn in that fourth quarter, so that was fun to watch as well. So a good all-around win, dominating for sure, and I think getting our guys some rest in that fourth quarter will be big for Monday night's game against the one seed Pistons. So I think that one is going to be fun as well. So great all-around win, and it was good to see us take advantage of a little bit of a banged up Hawks team.
Well said. What about you, Carl?
Yeah, pretty much have to agree with everything Tommy said. I don't know what else you could really say about this. The Celtics were incredible. Threes were raining in. Defense was incredible, and we really saw that, especially how they were preventing, Johnson from going off. It was really cool to see the Celtics not only pick up a win, but pick up a very dominant win. And honestly, this actually takes me back to when they had that dominant run back in 2024, specifically having that game against the Golden State Warriors, or even, referencing other games like they had against the Pacers and the Brooklyn Nets a month prior to that Warriors game. I got flashes of that. I got to see, the Celtics play some even more interesting and great basketball. And this is coming off of a week where they weren't doing too hot and easily had their worst week since the start of the season, but definitely rebounded, got back on track, and gave us what is supposed to be their greatest win, or one of their greatest wins, arguably, this season so far.
Yeah, well said. You guys summed it up perfectly, and I don't know how I could even put a cherry on top of that. You guys killed it. But, my initial thoughts and takeaways from this game is, again, I agree with what Carl said. I was getting reminiscence of 2024 with this Celtics team about how dominant they were, and even flashback to last year, which I thought their best win of the season was against the Phoenix Suns. Kind of when I think no Tatum, and that's the team I kind of remember because you had no Tatum, and it kind of gave me flashbacks to that huge blowout win like that night, and that was the best game of the season I thought last year. But again, you beat down the Atlanta Hawks tonight, and my favorite part of the win, and Tommy stole it, so gotta give Tommy some credit though, was seeing our main guys actually get some play tonight. We got Mari Williams, and we also had tonight Ron Harper Jr. So got some minutes from them and was a fun one. And as you see below in the ticker, I mean, they did very well tonight. I mean, for the limited minutes they played, I thought they had a solid night. Obviously, not like we're not going to go praise them because it's not like they took over the game, but for playing in garbage time, I like what they did. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Ron Harper, we saw him hit an open three at the top of the key. Amari Williams got to the foul line a few times. So, just is good to see them get on the court. Obviously, no major minutes or nothing that, would have changed the final outcome, I don't think, but it was just good to see them get out there and hit some shots and just, get their confidence up a little bit, getting some NBA minutes.
Yeah, well said. Well, we'll flip it over to Carl in a second because the Celtics dominated this entire game, and you're going to see it right here. But it's literally a green fog because that's all you saw. But let's flip it over to Carl as Carl is going to give us the quarters because, as you see, it was just dominating from the Boston Celtics the entire game.
Yep, just like Griffin said, pretty much this entire stat sheet is caked in the green. You start off, you have a tiny bit of red. So the Hawks had one lead and then they would go on to lose that. And of course, that would be, precursor or prelude for things to come. So you pretty much have the Celtics outscoring the Hawks by only 7 points. And then you go on to the second quarter where now you have the Celtics in 52 and the Hawks only 5 points compared to what they had in the first quarter. So, of course, not looking too well. And that unfortunately gets even worse for the Hawks as not only do they end that first quarter with just barely like 50 points compared to the Boston Celtics having 80 points. Going into that next quarter, Boston Celtics continues to outscore the Hawks 35-23. And then in that last quarter, the Hawks try to mount a comeback and not necessarily a comeback per se, but they're just putting up shots because hey, the game's over. Why not? So of course, you have the Celtics ending the fourth quarter with only 15 points compared to the Hawks ending with 32 points. But it really wasn't going to do much for ATL at the end of the day because Boston just had their number throughout the entire game.
Yeah, well said. And you see right here, the Celtics led by 43 points at 6.9 in the third quarter. So the Celtics truly dominated this game. And as you showed and explained right there, Carl, it was a fun one for Celtics fans. And, I want to also mention some stats for the Boston Celtics tonight. Because they once again did out rebound Atlanta. So, I think one pattern that we even saw last year, and this is a question for you guys, and I want to go around and ask you guys this because I feel like last year we were having more trouble rebounding the ball, but this year every night we come in here, it's rebounds, rebounds, rebounds because tonight Boston Celtics had 55 rebounds opposed to 47 rebounds for the Atlanta Hawks. Oh, geez, I couldn't say the Hawks for a second. But my question for you guys is what causes this? Because you have Jason Tatum last year, who was a phenomenal rebounder. You had Luke Cornett, Al Horford, and Porzingis at times who could rebound the ball. So why do you think the Celtics are so much better at rebounding this year? And we'll start off with you, Tommy, and go to Carl because I can't put a finger on it.
I think it has a lot to do with the young guys that have stepped up in the rotation this year. Guys like Jordan Walsh, Hugo Gonzalez. We saw Minot early on in the year play some big minutes and have some big rebounding games. And a lot of rebounding really has to do with effort and positioning. And I think that leads to the coaching staff doing a good job of having these guys prepared. And we see guys like Gonzalez and Jordan Walsh just play with so much effort on a night-to-night basis. Tonight, Baylor Shireman got a lot of minutes. He had 7 rebounds as well. So I think just, we see a lot of guys that are playing really for their future in the league this year. So I think, just pride and effort really is the biggest thing that goes into rebounding. And I think, Joe Mazzulla does a good job and this coaching staff as a whole getting this team prepared on a night-to-night basis. And they really show up most nights in the rebounding margins. We talked about it a lot early on in the year, and we thought it was something that they were going to struggle with this season, kind of with the lack of size that they have compared to past years. But I think for the most part, they've proved a lot of fans wrong in that aspect. Rebounding hasn't killed them much at all. Since about, I don't know, a quarter of the way through this season, they've done a great job of kind of keeping that margin close, if not winning the rebounding margin. So just, it comes down to effort and hustle. And I think the Celtics have young guys and the right roster to kind of, rebound and effort teams.
Yeah, well said. What do you think, Carl?
Yeah, pretty much like what Tommy said. I feel like this is something that definitely starts with the coaching staff, preparing your team for that. And, just having everybody involved. It can't just be, you're relying on your big players or, your more longer players on grabbing rebounds because, rebounds really do help or hurt the game for either or both teams. And that's something that we saw the Celtics, as you had mentioned, Griffin, suffered with last season, specifically when they had that series against the Knicks. I would say nobody was grabbing rebounds, and that really hurt them, especially when they were having to compete with a Mitchell Robinson or even a Carl Anthony Towns. So definitely the coaching staff did a great job in preparing them and then some, but also, Joe Mazzulla did warn them, it's like, hey, if you're not going to grab rebounds, then there should be no point why you're on that court. There has to be effort. There has to be that tenacity. There has to be, a reason why you're here. So you have to show why you're productive. So definitely, of course, as again, Tommy had mentioned, the coaching staff did a great job in preparing that team, but also firing up a bit too. Really getting them to develop that skill in helping that team out as much as they can, and that really does start and potentially even end with rebounding.
Yeah, well said. And I love both of your guys' analysis about it. And I agree. It's the coaching, it's the young guys actually stepping up this year because, like, for example, I know and he got 9 rebounds tonight. It's Ugo Gonzalez too, like their rookie. It's the young pieces on the Celtics team, and everybody is contributing. Everybody is going out there getting rebounds. It's not just a one man show and Jason Tatum trying to get rebounds. It's a whole group collectively. So that's why, again, I don't know how desperately we need a big man, and we'll get into that in a little bit too. But for the Celtics tonight, I think the main reason why they beat the Hawks tonight is from how well they were shooting. The Boston Celtics shot 50.5% from the field goal tonight, and for Atlanta, 37.3% tonight. So it's just the shooting fact. They pretty much just shot the lights out compared to Atlanta. And then Atlanta did beat us on the turnover total with 11, and the Boston Celtics had 16. So I think, the 16 turnovers, and I'm going to bring this back up, is kind of where you see the end when we had 15 points. We were turning over the ball a lot. And I think that's just because you had a lot of young guys in there. And no hate to them because I love Ron Harper Jr. and Amari Williams, but I think they need to get comfortable up with the Celtics. They spent a lot of time in Maine, so they just need to get comfortable with the organization. And when you're put in garbage time, it's just I don't even know, but Tillman was in there as well. But Tommy, if you wanted to give us the Atlanta Hawks stats, because you know again, we broke this down. Carl and I broke this down the other night. Trae Young was traded when we went right before we went on, and boom, like I almost said McConnell, CJ McCollum.
It
Tommy, if you
happens, man. It happens.
Tommy, if you didn't know, Carl and I have an inside joke about that now, because he on his TikTok video, if you didn't know, he kept saying, Carl, break it down for Tommy, because I you gotta give the story.
Kept on butchering CJ McCollum and TJ McConnell's names, just mixing up the two.
It happens. I do it too. I just almost did it right there. But McCollum, had a rough night, and I don't know. It makes me wonder: did this Wizards team win the trade? But break it down for us, Tommy.
Yeah, I think the Wizards do have some young talent. Carl brought it up earlier. Jalen Johnson was very limited tonight. Going into tonight, he was shooting over 50% from the field. So he was kind of the one guy I was looking at for this Hawks team that, if you let him get hot and, play make for others, I think the Hawks could have stayed in this game. The Celtics did a great job of limiting him. He only went 4 of 14 from the field, had 8 rebounds, 5 assists, but he had 4 turnovers. So, creating those turnovers allows the Celtics to go out in transition, and I think they're a great team when, they can turn teams over and kind of get out and get easy looks, whether it be layups, dunks, or open threes. I think that's where the Celtics thrive the most. Okongwu had a good night. He's a young piece that the Hawks have at the center position. We obviously saw KP wasn't playing tonight. He's still battling that illness that we saw happen in the playoffs last year, which is still crazy to me. He is recovering from, I believe, a little Achilles injury too. So no KP tonight, unfortunately, but we saw the other Hawks big. He had probably the best night for them all around. Okongwu with 21 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. CJ McCollum, like Griffin just brought up, who they got from the Trae Young trade along with Corey Kispert. McCollum, a solid veteran guy. They said on the broadcast that he's averaged 20 or more points for 10 straight years in the league. And I think that's a pretty respectable stat regarding CJ McCollum, just kind of his longevity and consistency in the NBA. His age now, maybe a little bit older and not great on both ends, but he can still give you 20 to 30 nights or 20 to 30 points on any given night. So, good to see the Celtics limit him as well. He only finished with 11 points. He as well finished 4-14 from the field. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, another one of Griffin's favorite players. I feel like, he's one of the guys that you like bringing up once in a while. Another young guy with, a lot of talent, and he's being able to have the ball in his hands more in his role with the Hawks now, especially now that Trae Young's gone. He's getting a lot more playmaking opportunity, which he hasn't had in previous years when he was with Minnesota. The Celtics did a pretty good job of limiting him as well. He shot 6 for 16 from the floor. So the Celtics really defensively were great, not letting guys get hot for Atlanta, controlling their few key guys in Johnson and McCollum, not letting them get going offensively. So a great all-around performance, limiting these Hawks young guys and veterans to, quiet nights offensively.
Well said, Tommy. And Alexander is my guy. I thought he was gonna be the difference maker for that Atlanta Hawks team, but I don't know. Guess not, because the Hawks kind of went way downhill, and I thought they were going to be a lot better this year. But for the Celtics tonight, there was more of a hefty injury list than we usually see. Obviously, Jason Tatum out and Chris Boucher out tonight, Peyton Pritchard along with Josh Minot, and no Shulga tonight. Didn't end up playing him. So, it makes me raise an eyebrow if they're going to keep him after trade deadline. I wonder if he's a piece that ends up leaving, because I don't know. We get into a conversation about that some other time, but Xavier Tillman played 5 minutes, no other stats tonight. Jordan Walsh hasn't really been the guy that I don't know. Tonight he did not really do a lot, but I think that's what we've seen from Walsh. You'll get a good night out of him, and then you'll have an off night. And tonight had 2 rebounds and an assist, and was actually a +7 in the plus minus category. Ron Harper Jr., as we mentioned already, main report guy, had six minutes, had 3 points and 3 rebounds, shot 50%. And this is the time for plugs, because we're talking about Ron Harper Jr. here. Everyone go check out the Ron Harper Jr. interview on the Celtics Nation Rise account. So go check that out after this. But Amari Williams tonight, also keep your eyes peeled for that video, because that'll be a fun one. Played 12 minutes, played the whole last fourth quarter, and had 3 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 blocks. But I want to ask you guys, what do you think about Amari Williams tonight? Because, it looked like he had 2 turnovers, and I think, how many fouls did he have? I'm not sure. I'm not getting his fouls, but 2 turnovers, and he looked a little off tonight. But do you guys think that's just his limited minutes in the NBA? Because that's where I'm going for. I think he hasn't got a lot of time. He's young, and he just needs to get comfortable. But we'll go Tommy and Carl. What are your thoughts?
It just boils down to kind of the change in pace from the NBA level, from the G League level. Kind of when he plays up in Maine, he gets a lot more touches, gets into the flow of the game way more, makes way more decisions with the ball in his hands. And then at the NBA level, it takes a lot of adjusting time. I know he's been practicing with the Celtics pretty much for most of the season, but when it comes to game time, it's just there's no a whole nother speed and physicality out there on the court. So I thought it was good to just see him get out on the court and kind of get some minutes at this level. I don't really take any too much of a concern or thoughts into any of the box score stuff right now. I think he's still going to take time to develop. I think once he gets a full off season with the Celtics, he can get more weight added to him and just get more agile. I feel like he's still very young as well, and he has a big frame. He's 7 feet tall. So I feel like once he kind of gets used to fitting in his body, gaining some more muscle, and just getting used to the NBA speed, I think he can play a pretty big role for the Celtics in years to come. So just really good to see him and Ron Harper Jr. just get some minutes at the NBA level. And it's just good to see those guys get out on the court really and contribute.
Yeah, well said. And before you go, Carl, too, I want to mention something. I think he had a lot of good things too. And you're right, Tommy. You don't really look at the box score when you're getting put in garbage time, for one. For two, like, not this early, but I like the 2 blocks, and I like Joe Mazzulla's trust in him as well. Because you saw Ugo, he said he was the one who like went for the, to overturn that block. But I just like the mutual trust as well. So I think that's upside too. But you go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, pretty much. When I first saw him being put in that game, I actually got pretty excited. Really to see him finally get some, minutes and stuff. Not to say, oh, it needed to happen immediately, but as we discussed before, I feel like for him to truly be immersed into the Boston Celtics, especially on the main roster, is by allowing for him to, dip his feet into the water first, or his toes into the water first. And we got a, hint of what he can provide to this team. That assist to Yogo Gonzalez, probably the best highlight that he has had thus far as an NBA player. That was really, really cool. You know what I mean? You talked about how his playmaking is absolutely incredible. And even though it was just one play, there was a flash of that. The defense was there too. Yeah, the couple of turnovers happened, but I feel like, when you're a young player, and especially with all of these expectations on you, because there are a lot of expectations on him, especially with how he's playing in Maine. Definitely, that's normal, and I feel like that's something that he's gonna adjust and really find himself eventually becoming more confident as a Boston Celtic overall when he does get the call up to come off of the bench for Keita, maybe even play alongside him. Who knows? So it's just like, yeah, I wouldn't really sweat what's going on, and I know you believe a lot in him, and you're making me believe even more in him because again, garbage time, he plays well, and I'm just excited to see more of this guy on the court.
Yeah, well said, Carl. Well said. Do you have anything else, Tommy? Well, next up on the stat sheet is another draft pick. Ugo Gonzalez tonight had 7 points, 9 rebounds, and geez, he was on fire on the glass tonight. Shot 60%. Coming into the season, we talked about how much of his shooting numbers was an issue, like his shooting percentage and everything. But he shocked us, I tell you what. And Luka Garza tonight had 4 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. And Baylor Shireman, I thought he had a very, very good night. We've been and I, Quinny's not here tonight, but I gotta throw some shade to him. I gotta throw some shade to Quinny because he been talking down on Baylor Shireman, and tonight I thought he had a pretty good night. Had 9 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and shot 42.9%. Was also in that starting lineup for the Boston Celtics tonight because they're not going to let Anthony Simons go into that starting lineup and kind of, feel comfortable. They're going to keep him coming off the bench. But I thought Baylor had an excellent night. Do you guys have anything on Baylor's night though tonight? Because I thought tonight was just a great game for him. And it's like almost, I'm trying to give an example of who it kind of reminds me of. It's kind of like a Jordan Walsh game. like last year or something like that when Jordan Walsh would go out there and prove it. This is kind of a prove it game for Baylor Shireman, and he proved that he could be a piece on this team. Not the Sam Hauser replacement, but a piece. But Tommy, do you have anything?
Just good to see him as well. Kind of get some bigger minutes tonight, get thrown into that starting lineup. He had some buckets where it was just really within the flow of the game. I feel like he's a guy that's easy to play with for guys like Jaylen Brown, Pritchard, and White that are more ball dominant. He's a guy that's not going to take a ton of dribbles when he's out there, but if he's open from beyond the arc, he's more than capable of hitting a few shots. And if he's able to crash a glass and grab rebounds for the Celtics, that's only a huge plus, I feel like. So just good to see Shireman get some bigger minutes and feel comfortable within the flow of the game. And I feel like, a guy that kind of gets stuck at the end of the bench at times throughout the season, he definitely deserves, a few opportunities like this to prove himself and what he can do when he is out there.
Well said. What about you, Carl? Do you have anything on Baylor Shireman tonight?
Pretty much continue to have belief in this kid. I really do like seeing him play in the way that he does. He knows his role and he plays that to perfection, I would say, not just in this instance, but other instances as well. I feel like when you do look at, this Boston Celtics bench, even with guys like a Baylor Shireman starting, it's kind of like, reaching into your bag and having the inventory to like fight a big bad in a game. You're not realizing that even though you have these small pieces that may not compare to the strength or weapons that you're, having to face off against, you can still build up to something very, very special. And that you have here with Shireman. Again, rebounding is great, playmaking is great, defense is really cool as well. And it does make you wonder, how well is he going to contribute to the Celtics in the future, especially when Jason Tatum comes back too. That pretty much is that question when you're really seeing these guys and they're showing off what they can provide to us, and could definitely be like a Jordan Walsh type player where, on nights he can be great, other nights not so well. But at the end of the day, they do know what the Celtics and the entire organization and team expect of them, and they're at least going to try.
Yeah, well said, well said. But Namias Keita now tonight had the highest plus minus, was a plus 39 tonight, had 14 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block. And then Anthony Simons, who I thought was incredible on defense tonight, played a good game tonight, had 14 points, 2 rebounds, assist, and a block. And then Derek White, funny night. He didn't actually get the double-double, but he had 12 assists, 7 points, 5 rebounds, and a block. Now it comes down to these two for CNR MVP. So keep your ears peeled for this one, because first off, we have Sam Hauser, who shot no 2-point shots and was 10 for 21 from 3-point land and had 10 3-pointers made. Had 30 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. And I think he was forcing it a lot at the end, trying to beat Marcus Smart on that 3-point category, but had from the field goal, shot 47.6. I thought he had an incredible night tonight, but also Jaylen Brown showing off for his, and this is an interesting fact too, 2 turnovers from Sam Hauser, 1 turnover for Jaylen Brown. So being able to limit the turnovers for Jaylen Brown, I love that. And Jaylen Brown showed off for the home crowd tonight, had 41 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, and shot 46.7% from the field goal. And I thought, the most important thing for me is I thought Jaylen Brown was doing this when it was meaningful. He did it at first. He showed off at first in the game. And then, Sam Hauser was more so doing it when the Celtics were up big. But I don't know. I'll go first. I'll give my CNR MVP first, because I think you guys get the route I'm going with. On a normal night, I would give it to Sam Hauser, but I really thought Jaylen Brown deserved it tonight. And it's not even his 41 points. And you guys might go Sam Hauser with this, because I get it. Sam Hauser had a huge night, but I'm going Jaylen Brown because I think his baskets were more meaningful earlier in the game. And on top of that, with Jaylen Brown as well, is he had, I think, 30 something at halftime. He played phenomenal. So I'm going Jaylen Brown, but and showing off for the home crowd. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. But who are you going, Tommy, for your CNR MVP?
Jaylen Brown continues, to lead this team on a night-to-night basis. His efficiency has really taken a huge leap this year. But tonight, I'm going to go with Sam Hauser as my MVP. A guy that I have been, pretty hard on, I feel like, this year. Had a slower start to the season, but I feel like over the past month or so, he's starting to really find his rhythm. The last game against Miami, I thought he had a lot of big buckets down the stretch of that game, hitting some deep threes. We saw the putback tip. That was big in that game for the Celtics to pull that one out. And then tonight, as you said already, did not take a shot in front of the three-point line. He started tonight 10 of 15 from three, and then we saw him put up a lot of shots at the end of that fourth quarter, but he kind of cooled off. But my vote goes to Sam Hauser. I think he's been playing really well as of late, and I think tonight, he's definitely deserving at least of my vote for CNR MVP.
Interesting. Now, Carl,
Carl, down to you, man.
You're the deciding vote. Unless he goes for Anthony Simons tonight. Carl's
Actually, no.
Carl's gonna go with let's go with Amari Williams.
Amari Williams. Yeah, just because of that shot he gave to Hugo.
I love it. All right, Carl, it comes down to you. You're the deciding factor.
You got, first of all, coming into this, I did have a set person, but you guys really did bring in a lot of great points and everything. Jaylen Brown, his shots were definitely meaningful and definitely set the tone for us, towards the end of that game, or just in general for the eventual win that we would have. But then Sam Hauser is lighting it up. He's, really shown that, hey, I was in this slump, but I'm really coming back up here. As Tommy mentioned, Miami, he really helped us out in that game and probably could have won MVP or CNR MVP for that one. And tonight here, he's pretty much a surefire, winner in my eyes. So I would take him, despite the fact he was stat padding at the end. I will take him. The 30 points, the 10, threes. I don't know. I'm just going to have to take him. Jaylen Brown's great, and I would have taken him any other night, but I'm going to take Sam.
Wow. Sam Hauser. Wow, out of nowhere, Sam Hauser gets it done tonight. I think his first CNR MVP. I think this is. Hold on, I'm looking for through the Instagram because we didn't give it to him against Miami. You're right.
He was due for one, man. I think we're seeing some voter fatigue here potentially because it's so easy. We could probably give it to Jaylen Brown after mostly every Celtics win. It feels like.
Right.
So, on nights like this, I feel like you kind of got to spread the love to other guys that don't, get all the credit most of the nights. So it's kind of good to see Sammy get that MVP here.
Right.
Let's see though. Let's see really quick, you guys, because I don't know. I wrote it down somewhere. I'm not staying on track of keeping track of the CNR MVP voters, but hold on. Let's see. This is his first CNR MVP of the season. So we don't have the clapping from Quinny today, but we'll give it up for I can't snap, you guys. I can't snap.
Yeah, come on.
I can clap. I can't snap. Listen. But congratulations to Sam Hauser. I tell you guys what, I think he deserved it. I think he was shooting phenomenal tonight, but 41 can't go unnoticed, especially because they were meaningful. I know I'm still pleading my case to you guys, but it's already a decided factor. But we're coming to the point. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we close it off? We'll start off with Tommy and go to Carl and back to myself. Any final thoughts on this win versus the Hawks?
For me to see Anthony Simons to play the way he has this week really, makes me excited. Most of us has kind of vouched for him to stay on this team this year. He's definitely heard his name in pretty much all of the trade talk right now with the trade deadline approaching. So for him to come out and score 39 against Miami and kind of will us back into that game. And then even tonight, come back and shoot 50% from the field, play great defense, as you mentioned earlier, Griffin. Really, it's great to see him kind of catch a little rhythm here and get some confidence going and to kind of prove to Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla why he still should continue to be on this team. So for me, another little main takeaway I take out of tonight is Anthony Simons again showing up big for the Celtics, just playing his role, continuing to come off the bench and give this team a spark. So it's good to see Simons step up, and I hope we continue to see that for the rest of the year.
Yeah, what about you, Carl? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, like Tommy said, I'm just excited to see more of this team. I don't think, any more changes. I don't think we need to make any more changes to this team. Sure, having a center would be nice, but I don't think we should make any trades or at least think of doing so just because our team is looking really good right now.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I agree. I don't see a lot of moves you have to make, especially with Tatum coming back. I think that's just it's gonna be rough at first, but when he comes back and he's clicking with the team, I really don't see much more improvement that this team needs. Maybe something little. Maybe you flip like a Boucher or someone and get someone off of the market, a buyout contract. Maybe find that. Maybe toss Boucher or something. Let him get a chance with someone else. But for me, the only initial thought I have, the takeaway thought is, it sucked not to see Porzingis, but you obviously heard Tommy break it down tonight. But great win tonight for the Celtics. And with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to tune in on Monday, right? I think I'm right. Monday at 8:00 versus the Detroit Pistons. That's going to be a nail biter. That's going to be a fun one to watch. So make sure to tune in after that one. And with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications. We will see you guys with the next one. Peace, you guys.
Take care, y'all.